morning, church. About 20 blocks northeast of here, there's a modest little ranch house where Carol lives. Now, when you walk in the front door of Carol's house, the first thing you're going to notice is how well kept it is, and how, unlike my house, everything has its place and is in its place. And that's important to Carol because about 15 years ago, at the age of 60, Carol lost her sight. 5 years later, she lost her husband of 40 years. Now she lives there alone, and she gets along pretty well, but she does rely on her community and her friends to do day-to-day activities that most of us probably take for granted. About a year ago, she heard about a refresh painting project where volunteers would come into her home and paint some rooms of her house for free. She signed up for it, and on a hot day in June last year, a crew of women from St. Peter's who had volunteered through the Urban Village Housing Subcommittee to take part in the refresh project went to Carol's home and started painting. Now, I agreed to be one of the coordinators of that project mainly because I don't like to paint, so I just wanted to be in charge. And so I got to go to the house during the day and meet the homeowner, so I went to Carol's door, and she invited me in, and she directed me to sit down at her dining room table. She served me a slice of the pizza that she had purchased for the volunteers, and she began to tell me a little bit about herself. As we were talking, I noticed there was a stack of greeting cards on the table that were unopened, and it turns out Carol had just gotten out of the hospital from surgery. And these were get well cards that had gone unopened because nobody had been there to read them to her. So we read them, and as I read each one, she beamed with pride and gratitude at the kind words her friends had sent for her to get well. At the end of the day, we all sat down, volunteers and Carol, to talk, and she admitted that she felt a little selfish that she had taken part in the project because, after all, she wouldn't be able to see the results of the hard work of the painters. But then she smiled and she said, "But you know what? I'm going to smell this fresh paint in my house for weeks to come." And I think she was as happy and as pleased, and that day she took a little more pride in herself and in her home and in her community because of what the St. Peter's volunteers had done through the urban village that day. Now, I think Carol's story is a perfect example of what Urban Village is here to do. Most of us know that people like Carol exist in our community, but what we don't know is how to connect with them and how a small act of service can mean so much in their lives. Urban Village works to build a bridge between the members of our parish and those in our community who need the help that we can give. So I would like to invite you today to come with us, come help build these bridges, and then cross over them to serve our community. It's an easy thing to do. An easy way to get started is refresh. This is the third year. We're doing it again, June 1st and 2nd. You don't need to know anything about painting. You don't need to know anything about anything. Just show up. If you've got a couple hours to paint, you're welcome. For those of you who would like to get more involved in connecting with our community, we're looking for team leaders who will come and be the point person for a house. You meet them and you help get volunteers to paint that house and hopefully build a long-term connection. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, you know what, I'm happy to use my talents for stewardship, but I'm not a painter and I'm not somebody who can walk into a stranger's house and talk to them. It's outside of my comfort zone. Well, I think God gave every one of us the talent to connect one-on-one with people who need our help. So I would encourage you, step outside of your comfort zone. Come join us. I promise you, you will be blessed. Thank you very much.